The FBI is helping federal and state officials look into these scams. According to investigators, fraudsters would recruit healthy people into their hospice program, then recruiters or corrupt doctors would line their pockets with millions of taxpayer dollars. 5:10 a.m., Houston, Texas, March 18, 2026. $2.5 billion in bribes, 31 police officers already exposed, 65 more under investigation, not criminals hiding from the law enforcement selling it. One disgrace that should never have existed inside the United States. In less than 90 seconds, FBI and ICE agents breached a $14.7 million mansion tied to a former Somali police commissioner. Badges were traded like currency, investigations were erased, entire operations were cleared before they even began. This wasn't corruption, this was betrayal at scale, and what they found inside that mansion would expose something far more dangerous than anyone expected. If this kind of corruption disgusts you as much as it should, hit like and subscribe. Because what the individuals targeted this morning were committing a variety of healthcare frauds in the greater Los Angeles County area, including operating fraudulent hospice care facilities. You're going to hear a lot about that this morning. The serenity of Southern California's most affluent zip codes evaporated at exactly 4:30 a.m. when 200 federal agents executed a series of high-stakes raids on 35 separate luxury estates. This wasn't a standard local sweep or a low-level sting. This was the climax of Operation Bitter Pill, a multi-agency surgical strike targeting a protected class of criminals, licensed medical professionals. By sunrise, the FBI had neutralized a criminal syndicate consisting of 35 doctors and nurses who had allegedly compromised the American healthcare system to the tune of $500 million. They didn't use forced entry to rob the public. They used medical credentials and federal billing codes to execute a $500 million heist. The scale of the operation was unprecedented. Across Los Angeles, Orange, and Riverside counties, tactical teams moved in total radio silence to secure digital evidence before it could be wiped. At the primary command center, a deceptive medical billing firm in Glendale, investigators discovered what they described as a billing factory that operated with the clinical efficiency of a high-frequency trading floor. This wasn't a place of healing, it was a high-speed data hub engineered to drain the U.S. Treasury. Evidence seized on site revealed the network was pumping out over $1.2 million in fraudulent Medicare claims every 24 hours. For these defendants, the sacred transition of end-of-life care was treated as nothing more than a high-volume revenue stream. The core of the federal indictment details a chilling disregard for legal ethics and human dignity. In the United States, hospice is a benefit strictly reserved for the most vulnerable, those with a certified life expectancy of 6 months or less. It is a system built on absolute trust, and prosecutors allege these 35 professionals dismantled that trust for profit. Investigators found that at one Anaheim-based facility linked to the network, an impossible 92% of terminal patients had been enrolled for over 3 years. These people were not in their final days. They were often healthy, active seniors who were being utilized as human placeholders. Many were completely unaware that in federal databases they were listed as suffering from end-stage terminal conditions. The syndicate allegedly operated a predatory recruiter-to-enrollment pipeline. Corrupt marketers were dispatched to low-income housing complexes and senior community centers, masquerading as advocates offering free vitamins or transportation services. In reality, they were data harvesters. For every senior citizen they convinced to provide a Medicare number, the recruiter received an illegal kickback and the participating physician received a substantial referral fee.
Once the data was secured, a doctor would sign a fraudulent certification of terminal illness, often without ever examining the patient. The moment that electronic signature was processed, the syndicate began billing Medicare between $800 and $1,500 per day for intensive services that were never rendered. The financial fallout is staggering, but the criminal rot goes deeper than simple overbilling. As the FBI processed the arrested doctors, they uncovered the operation's darkest layer. Inside luxury vehicles and behind false walls in medical offices, agents discovered vacuum-sealed stacks of currency and ledger books detailing suspicious financial ties to international transit routes. The $500 million siphoned from Medicare wasn't just funding estates and exotic cars, it was allegedly being used as primary capital for a massive underground infrastructure. These medical professionals weren't just white-collar fraudsters, they were the alleged financial backbone of a sophisticated shadow network using taxpayer dollars to underwrite the very chaos they were sworn to protect society from. As the initial shock of the arrest faded, a far more sinister reality began to emerge from the forensic data. This wasn't just a group of greedy doctors padding their bank accounts. This was a sophisticated laundering operation designed to bridge the gap between clean federal funding and dirty underground capital. The investigation's deeper, more dangerous phase shifted from medical clinics to the shadowy intersection of healthcare and international narcotics trafficking. The $500 million siphoned from Medicare served as a massive financial filter, a way to move vast sums of money through the American economy without triggering a single red flag at the Treasury Department. According to federal investigators, the syndicate's financial structure was a masterpiece of criminal engineering. They didn't just spend the money on luxury, they reinvested it into a shadow network. In several raided properties in Orange County, agents found more than just patient files. Behind false walls and inside high-end safes, they discovered ledger books that looked more like cartel accounting than medical records. These ledgers detailed a wash system where proceeds from the illicit drug trade were mixed with legitimate-looking Medicare reimbursements. By funneling narcotics cash through the hospice facilities as private donations or operational investments, the syndicate could turn street-level drug money into clean corporate profits, which were then used to buy up more medical licenses and expand the fraud. The connection to the narcotics trade wasn't just financial, it was logistical. Federal prosecutors alleged that the same marketers who prowled senior centers for Medicare numbers were also being used to scout transit routes and secure warehouses for illicit shipments. This was a dual-threat organization. One side of the house was stealing millions from the government through fraudulent billing, while the other side was using that very infrastructure, the transport vans, the medical supply chains, and the commercial real estate to facilitate the movement of narcotics across Southern California. It was the ultimate camouflage. Who would ever suspect the hospice transport van, supposedly carrying a dying patient, of moving bricks of high-grade illicit substances? The lifestyle fueled by this $500 million heist was nothing short of obscene. As IRS criminal investigation agents combed through the suspect's digital footprints, they found a trail of excess that standard medical salaries could never justify. We are talking about $200,000 Italian sports cars registered to non-profit clinics and $10 million coastal mansions purchased through offshore shell companies in the Cayman Islands. One high-ranking nurse earning a reported salary of $120,000 was found to be maintaining an international travel itinerary that included 5-star stays in Dubai, Paris, and Macau, all funded by the commission she earned from signing off on fake terminal diagnoses. But the most disturbing discovery was the death ledger. Investigators found an encrypted database where the syndicate ranked patients not by their medical needs, but by their billing potential. Patients with clean Medicare histories were labeled as gold mines, while those who required actual medical attention were often ignored or transferred out because they were too expensive to maintain. The doctors weren't just ignoring the sick, they were actively avoiding them. They wanted the names, they wanted the numbers, but they had zero intention of providing a single minute of care. The $500 million was pure profit because their overhead was virtually zero. No medicine was bought, no real nurses were hired, and no equipment was utilized. It was a ghost healthcare system, a hollow shell of an industry designed solely to facilitate the transfer of wealth from the taxpayer to the criminal elite. The FBI's Financial Crimes Unit has already frozen over 150 bank accounts tied to the defendants, but they admit that tens of millions have already vanished into the cryptocurrency ether or been moved through Hawala networks, an informal money transfer system often used by international criminal syndicates to bypass traditional banking oversight. This was a war on two fronts, a fight to stop the bleeding of the American healthcare system and a desperate race to track down the narco-linked capital before it could disappear forever. The investigators were no longer just looking for fraud. They were uncovering a new breed of criminal, the narco-physician, who utilized the prestige of a medical degree to mask the heart of a kingpin. As the federal government's hammer finally fell, The focus shifted from the tactical brilliance of the raids to the catastrophic failure of the systems meant to prevent them. The final phase of this investigation exposed a regulatory void in California that allowed this $500 million cancer to grow unchecked for years. The sheer audacity of the 35 defendants wasn't just born from greed. It was born from a calculated belief that no one was watching. Prosecutors are now revealing that the state's oversight apparatus was not just lagging, it was effectively dormant. Legislative deadlines for hospice reform in Sacramento had been allowed to expire, creating a dark zone where convicted felons and active federal inmates were able to secure medical licenses and operate healthcare facilities with zero interference. The courtroom drama that followed the arrests has been nothing short of explosive. As the 35 doctors and nurses faced a federal magistrate in Los Angeles, the true cost of their betrayal was laid bare. These were individuals who had taken the Hippocratic Oath, only to trade it for a seat at the table of international organized crime. Federal prosecutors are now seeking maximum sentences, citing not just the financial theft, but the moral depravity of the scheme. Under the federal sentencing guidelines, many of these defendants are facing 30 years to life in prison. Charges of healthcare fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering are being stacked with aggravating factors due to the alleged ties to narcotics trafficking. The message from the Department of Justice is clear. The white coat will no longer serve as a shield for the black heart of a criminal. The financial recovery effort is becoming one of the most complex in IRS history. While agents have seized over $150 million in tangible assets, including the fleets of luxury cars, the mansions in Glendale, and the offshore accounts, a massive portion of the $500 million remains missing. Forensic accountants are currently tracing a web of cryptocurrency transactions that lead back to Eastern Europe and Southeast Asia, suggesting that the narco-physicians were part of a global money-cleansing machine. This wasn't a local scam. It was a node in a worldwide network of illicit finance. The government's attempt to claw back these taxpayer dollars is a race against time and technology as the digital breadcrumbs grow colder with every passing hour. But beyond the money and the prison cells, the most lasting damage is the total collapse of trust in the hospice system. For thousands of families in Southern California, the word hospice no longer represents a place of peace, but a scene of a crime. The investigation has forced a massive audit of every licensed hospice provider in the state, a process that is expected to take years and likely uncover even more ghost clinics. The federal task force has signaled that this is only the beginning. They are moving from Operation Bitter Pill to a wider systemic purge of the healthcare industry, promising that every doctor who prioritized a kickback over a patient will eventually hear the sound of a tactical team at their door. As this justice file closes its current chapter, the 35 defendants sit in federal custody, their medical licenses revoked, and their reputations incinerated. They are the faces of a new era of crime where the stethoscopes and the scales of justice are weighed against bricks of cash and narcotics ledgers. The $500 million heist has been stopped, but the scars on the healthcare system remain. The FBI's message to the public is one of vigilance. In a world where your medical data is the new gold, the predators aren't always hiding in the shadows. Sometimes they are wearing a white coat and sitting in the exam room. The reckoning has arrived, and for those who turn death into a business, the final bill has finally come due. The $500 million siphoned from Medicare in this Southern California scheme represents more than just a massive hole in the federal budget. It represents a definitive breach of the social contract. When doctors and nurses, the very individuals we entrust with our lives in our most vulnerable hours, choose to align themselves with narcotics traffickers and professional fraudsters, the entire foundation of our justice system is shaken. Operation Bitter Pill has sent a shockwave through the medical community, proving that federal authorities are no longer looking at healthcare fraud as a victimless white-collar crime. They are treating it as a national security threat. As the 35 defendants await their final sentencing, The case serves as a grim reminder that greed knows no professional boundaries. These were not desperate individuals. These were wealthy, educated professionals who decided that $500 million was worth the price of their souls and the safety of the public. The fallout from this investigation will likely trigger the most aggressive overhaul of medical licensing laws in California's history. But for the thousands of patients used as pawns in this death ledger, the damage is already done. Their medical identities have been stained, and their trust in the system has been permanently shattered. We will continue to track the court proceedings and the ongoing hunt for the missing millions still circulating in the global shadow economy. This case proves that the most dangerous criminals don't always wear masks. Sometimes they wear scrubs. If you found this deep dive into the crime justice file vital, ensure you have liked the video and hit that notification bell. We don't just report the headlines, we expose the mechanics of the crime. Stay vigilant, stay informed, and thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next file.